Um, Let me ask your name and position here at the college.
Okay, I'm Candace Todd, and I'm an assistant professor of communication studies.
Okay. When you were growing up, what was one of your heroes or a person you looked up to?
Mm. Well, I am a child of the Kennedy era, so I thought Kennedy was quite the man. And I was in third grade when he was shot. I also thought Martin Luther King was a man that was the most admirable man ever. But I think what broke my heart was when Bobby Kennedy was shot, and I didn't realize how I thought he would truly make a difference if he had lived until he was shot. And then I thought that our country kind of deserved what happened to it because it was killing off these heroes. It felt like everybody I admired was dying. But I also liked fictional people. I read Cherry Ames. I never read about some rich girl solving mysteries, Nancy Drew. I read about Cherry Ames, and she was a nurse. In every book, she was a different kind of nurse. And so in one book, she would be an army nurse. In the next book, she would work in hospitals. And I thought she was pretty amazing to get around like that.
In your teens and now sort of college age, would you say that those were still your heroes, or did they sort of evolve over time?
Aside from the fact that they were dead, I still admired these people, even though I had become more aware that they had feet of clay. But I think as I went into college and I was studying nonviolence, I became more impressed by Gandhi because I saw him as a man of incredible courage who was able to say, no, I'm not going to fight. And I have always been a person I've been feisty. I'm not passive. And I realize it's harder to not fight when you truly think something important is going on. So I looked at people that had the power to stand up for their principles. And the person I admired the most that I met in college is a man named Igor Rodenko. And he had been a pacifist and into nonviolence. And during World War II, when it was very unpopular to be against war, he went to prison. He was in Alcatraz. And they abused the prisoners heavily during World War II for not being willing to go fight. And he survived. And so I thought these were great persons who had the courage of their convictions. And I understood that being a warrior or being a person or a hero of courage did not have to do with whether you were violent.
And as you later in life, do you believe that the world still has heroes or just people they admire?
Well, and I should mention that in grad school, when I went back to school in my 30s, I had to study for a whole semester a speech as persuasion, and I knew it would bore me to tears. So I picked a comic book called The Dark Knight Returns and studied that, thinking I was going to completely slice and dice this stupid guy because at the time he was so popular, and I did not want my cutie pie child falling in love with all the things that were for sale with Batman on them. And I ended up being converted to heroes like never before, especially Batman. And as I looked more and more, what is a hero? I saw that a hero is an inspirational figure. And I was doing this in the late 80s, in the early 90s. And at that time, as I read all of the stuff about heroes, I came to agree with the experts that we had celebrities, people who are famous for being famous and not heroes. If you look at heroes in films, we go from John Wayne to Clint Eastwood to guys who aren't, and girls later in the 90s that were not inspiring. But I think September 11 brought back the notion that a hero should be inspirational. And I very much enjoy looking at heroes and studying what seems inspiring to us and discovering that my own sense of inspiration has in some ways remained consistent, but in some ways continue to change.
And is there anything you'd sort of like to say about heroes or people we admire?
Well, I think there's, as I've been interested and intrigued, I have asked students about who's their hero sometimes, and I was very fascinated by when I asked this in some of my classes and they had to do speeches, how many students picked their own parents. And it made me wonder if I was a hero to my child and whether I should have aimed to be, whether I was inspirational. And that is, again, an issue of what people find as the defining characteristic, what inspires them, whether their parents are inspirational, whether their parents should be inspirational, or whether they're what I call aspirational, people you can aspire to be. And I prefer to think that we need heroes that are inspirational, that require us to be beyond our reach forever. And we never quite reach them. They're so far beyond. And so we are not reaching that and saying, oh, I'm good enough now. Versus heroes or models that are aspirational, and we can actually be that person. I think we need to have models and heroes both. And I think it's important for us to choose our heroes wisely.